Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for waiting. Welcome to the 10th Global Interactive Forum on Traffic and Safety, Creating a Traffic Culture for Safer Society, proudly hosted by the International Association of Traffic and Safety Sciences. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. First, on behalf of the host, Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, the IATSS president, will give opening remarks. President Takeuchi, please.
Good morning. My name is Kazuhiko Takeuchi, and I am the president of the International Association of Traffic and Safety Science, the so-called IATSS. I thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend today's event. We're also streaming this event online, and I would also like to thank all of our online viewers. We IATSS have been working on research and surveys focuses on traffic and safety as a cornerstone of our activities for the past 50 years, since it was founded in 1974. We aim to contribute to the realization of an ideal mobile society. This period has witnessed substantial changes in the global and regional traffic environment, with increasing demand not only for reducing traffic fatalities, but also practical approaches to solving various problems that combine diverse fields such as sustainable societies, human well-being, and ICT-centered technological innovation. Importance is also being increasingly accorded to considering the role of traffic as per the characteristics of each region and country, as well as a diverse background of various populations. Our association has adopted the perspective of conducting activities emphasizing transdisciplinarity aspects, which involve not only experts in the area of traffic and safety, but also experts and various other stakeholders in other related fields. We held the first global interactive forum on traffic and safety, GIFTS, in 2015 as a part of our activities leading up to the 50th anniversary of our association. And it's through everybody's effort that we are able to mark the important milestone of our 10th GIFTS event, celebrating the 50th anniversary of our association. As a high-level international platform for policy proposals on traffic and safety, GIFTS aims to take a transdisciplinary approach that includes not only academic fields, but also people involved in social implementation and policy proposals. It adopts the basic policy of creating effective proposals and standards that consider not only international common and universal aspects, but also regional and national differences. We hold discussions from the medium to long-term perspective of our 10 years. We also set a theme for every year in the open panel discussions, inviting international and domestic experts. We would like to express our sincere gratitude to all those who have supported GIFTS, as well as those who have helped in organizing this event. For this event, as a part of the culmination of 10 years of GIFTS, we will be discussing the theme of creating a traffic culture for safety society, wherein we aim to understand the regional differences in traffic culture. We will conduct discussions that will help generate policy proposals for each region and dig deeper into methods for implementing such proposals in society alongside international and domestic experts. We hope that everybody can participate. At the 50th anniversary ceremony held in September 17th, our association announced the IATSS Vision 2024, which outlines a 10-year plan for our association activities guidelines. We will touch on this vision in the final section of today's event. Summary of the 50th anniversary. The vision is to achieve a safe, sustainable, and positive mobility society in which no one is left behind, both domestically and internationally, by promoting association activities that overcome negative factors such as serious traffic accidents, environmental impact, and ill health, and creating a positive cycle by integrating mobility, sustainability, and human well-being. We hope that today's discussions will serve as a starting point toward achieving the vision. It would be our greatest pleasure if we could work together with all our stakeholders toward making that vision a reality. We ask everybody attending this event today for their understanding, cooperation, and continuous tremendous support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Takeuchi. We would like to move on to the keynote speeches. This year, we invited 2 lecturers. First, we would like to welcome Professor Nicola Christie, Professor Transport Safety at the Center for Transport Studies, University College London. Professor Nicola Christie, please.
Good morning, everybody. So today I'm going to talk about creating a traffic safety culture for a safer society, and particularly from a UK experience, why crashes happen and how to create a safety culture. Why focus on safety culture? So safety culture reflects how a society, safety is managed in a society. It involves shared beliefs, attitudes, values, perceptions, and understanding safety culture can help reduce the rate of incidents. So what is the influence of safety culture? So it shapes employee action. So this comes from workplace safety originally, the idea of safety culture. Employee actions and attitudes towards safety, and a poor safety culture is linked to incidents. So the first research on safety culture was done at an organisational level, and it referred to employers and employees, and can be described in terms of its level of maturity. And incidents happen when there is a poor safety culture. So here we see the Deepwater Horizon oil rig that exploded. There was a film about it, and the report said there was not a culture of safety on that rig. Similarly with the Titanic. So everyone felt it was unsinkable. However, the key to the binoculars that would have detected the iceberg was left on shore. So no one could use binoculars to detect, they may have detected the iceberg. Again, an indication of a poor safety culture. And they made a film. And Titan, so this was the submersible operated by OceanGate that imploded while attempting to explore the Titanic wreckage in June 2023. And the report says there was a very poor safety culture. Maybe there will be a film about it. This is the trajectory of a safety culture. It begins with being pathological. Who cares as long as we're not caught? It then becomes reactive. Safety is important. We do a lot of it every time we have an accident. Calculative, we have systems in place to manage all hazards. Proactive, we work on the problems that we still find. And generative, safety is how we do business around here. And I excuse using the word accident. We know it's unpreventable and we should actually say collision or crash, but this is quite an old document now. But I would say still, road safety is potentially reactive, that we do something when events occur, and we need to move to being more proactive and then generative. Aviation is an example of a very generative approach in terms of safety culture. So what are the components? Leadership is really important. So leaders take actions, everyone knows their stance on risks and what they need to do and how to avoid them. Respect, individuals know the dangers they face, experts are heard, and it fosters a culture of openness about errors and near misses. Mindful, everyone stays alert and prepared for the unexpected. It's just and fair, so there are clearly agreed boundaries between acceptable and unacceptable behaviour. And you learn, so all organisations need to learn, so that you can adapt, because things change, and I will get onto that later. So what is a traffic safety culture? It refers to collective values, beliefs, attitudes and behaviours that shape individuals and groups, how they approach safety on the road. It encompasses traffic laws, the importance of safety, behavioural norms of society and drivers, pedestrians and other road users. And what are the key components? As I've said, beliefs and attitudes, risk perception, attitudes towards safety measures and social norms, behaviours, particularly compliance with traffic laws, organisational influences like the government policies, educational programmes and campaigns, and environmental factors like the road conditions, design and use of safety equipment. And why is this important? Well, we need to reduce collisions and casualties and promote safer driving behaviour. There are economic benefits in terms of lower healthcare costs and economic costs due to crashes, and we can promote more responsible behaviour. We promote the consideration of others, and that will lead hopefully to a better quality of life, which contributes to our roads being less stressful and our environments being nicer to interact with. There are different levels of traffic safety culture maturity. So most of the best performing countries have a tradition of national road safety policies and targets. And very importantly, they reflect the political will of a government to act. And these are often reflected in strategies and vision statements and casualty reduction targets. An example of this, so this is Jacques Chirac. This is a long time ago, but in his second term, he said that road safety was going to be one of his main priorities. And in 2000, there were 15 people killed per billion vehicle kilometres driven and 14 per 100,000 inhabitants. It was an unacceptable high level of fatalities. So this is someone who said, this is going to be my priority. So they introduced a range of measures, which included speed cameras, establishing a national council on road safety, introducing probationary licenses for drivers, and introducing a blood alcohol level, which would have licence points if people were caught driving over their limit. So the impact of this, deaths reduced by half by 2010, a 75% improvement in reduction in average speed, improved vehicle safety, even at a time when the traffic was increasing. So in terms of exposure to risk, this was a really good outcome for France. And what I would say, this is a paper by my colleague, Walter, who will be talking later, and myself. There are lots of different ways. Culture in each country is very different, and you cannot cut and paste policies in high-income countries to low-income countries, because it all depends on context. So India, for example, I visited India in May. There is what I would describe a low level of traffic safety cultural maturity. Informal rules govern roads. There is an invisible burden on the poor. Road safety efforts are hampered by poor data, and there's a very strong cultural attachment to the car. Progress has started, but it is all about governance. So countries that have a good road safety performance have good governance demonstrated through policies and dedicated resources. So, for example, in London, the mayor has adopted Vision Zero. We don't have that nationally, but in some of our major cities, they are moving towards Vision Zero, sustainable safety, taking a safe systems approach. And here's an example. So we all know that Vision Zero means that we're trying to design road environments where if a crash occurs, the chance of being killed or seriously injured is reduced, and that we manage the environment. We recognise errors happen, we manage the environment. Again, safe system is something the UK government has adopted, and we know the different pillars, so safer roads, safer road users, safer speeds, safer vehicles, and a very good post-crash response. So that is something that our national government has adopted. For almost 3 decades, we had road safety targets in the UK, which led to substantial reductions in death and injury. However, with a different government, policy change and targets were abandoned. The road safety community were not happy about that. And since then, our road fatalities have broadly remained stable. And we have a very long tradition in the UK of managing traffic safety, which I'm very proud to be part of. All injury prevention starts with good data, so understanding what I would call the epidemiology of crashes: who, what, when, where, and why. You need to know that in order to target resources. And we call these, well, the police call these the fatal four. So speeding, using a mobile phone while driving, not wearing a seatbelt, and taking drugs or alcohol when driving. So we have a lot of data on texting and email and laws around using a phone. We have spotlights on red light running, switching lanes quickly, driving too closely behind vehicles and speeding. We have information about fatigue, and we tell drivers to take a break when they're on the motorways. We have evidential breath testing at the roadside. We have laws around the use of recreational drugs and some prescription drugs as well. And changing culture is about changing behaviour. And government has lots of levers to change behaviour. We have regulation and enforcement, encouragement and incentives, information and education, and nudging. And really we need a combination of all of those to make a difference. So we need to have a clear idea what motivates compliance. So often governments will commission research and understand motivations. So is it fear of causing death that will deter lack of compliance? Fear of losing a licence and impacts on family and employment and social status? The fear of having to pay a fine? And what is their motivation in relation to their friends and family? What would their friends and families do in certain circumstances? But these do vary with different segments of the population. We cannot treat it as a national population. We have to understand differences. So the government monitors compliance and reports on enforcement activities with regard to seatbelt wearing, levels of mobile phone use, drink driving, drug driving, and speed compliance. We don't have one police force in the UK. We have 43 police forces, but they are governed by national professional standards. And there are many ways in which we can strengthen traffic safety culture. education and awareness campaigns, educating the public on the consequences of risky behaviour, the creation and enforcement of traffic laws, and consistent enforcement to deter risky behaviour, community engagement, that is becoming more and more important in the UK, because otherwise we get a backlash with regard to measures that we are implementing. Role modelling encourages safe behaviour from public figures and parents, and feedback and reporting systems, providing platforms to report unsafe conditions. And you need capacity to deliver all of this. So this is the whole point about cut and pasting our policies. If you don't have the capacity to deliver this, that makes it very difficult. So, and this kind of capacity, we need dedicated casualty reduction expertise, transport planners and engineers, and even urban planners, educators and trainers, enforcers, and advocates, people who will continue to advocate for people who are involved in crashes. And we have a very good Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety, of which I am a member, and they do have the ear of the UK ministers. And it's really, really important to measure and monitor progress. So we will do social surveys to identify drivers believing that behaviour is dangerous. We will look at social disapproval, whether their friends or families would disapprove of their behaviour. Look at their perceived likelihood of getting caught. And this is in a background where police, dedicated police, traffic police, has really declined in the UK, so it is an issue. Look at their support for different kinds of legislation and how much they've actually engaged in the behaviour. And interventions need to be holistic and system-wide. They need to be multifaceted, multi-agency and evaluated. As a psychologist, I actually know one of the strongest ways to change behaviour is to change the environment and the road environment. And that makes a big difference. Education alone will not make a difference to behaviour. And there are lots of different things that we can do. So in terms of speed, in the UK, we have average speed cameras. We will have different speed limits. In London, there is a 20-mile-per-hour limit that has been adopted through most of London. And you might have heard on the news, Wales has also adopted 20 miles per hour as the default speed limit. We have lots of other ways of nudging people's behaviour, like these variable speed limits, which give feedback to the drivers. We also have a national speed awareness course. So if you are caught marginally speeding, so this is in an urban area, if the speed limit is 30 and you're going about 35 to 37 in that limit, you can be either have 3 points on your licence, or you'll be put on a speed awareness course. So you learn about the dangers of marginal speeding. So it's 30 for a reason, and it's saying to the driver, this is where we get pedestrians and cyclists, you need to be slow. Drink driving, strong public support for drink driving laws generally. Most support harsher penalties and even being banned from driving, and tougher limits, including zero alcohol limits. We don't have a zero alcohol limit at the moment in the UK. So tough penalties, high levels of enforcement, that is doubtful whether that is still happening. Media campaigns with the previous government, there were a reduction in the amount of campaigns. But those that tend to be most successful are those that feature losing one's licence, because people generally think they're not going to have a collision. They're more worried about losing their licence and the implications of that for their work and for their family life. And we have tackled the norm of socialising with drinks and social pressure not to drink when driving. So we have had these kind of campaigns for 10 or 15 years. Safety culture is a process, and it takes a long time. So 50 years of drink drive adverts, driver rehabilitation programs. We don't have alcohol interlocks, but that is potentially the next move. We have evidential breath testing, and we have harsh enforcement. So we have a history of many measures. And drink driving in road deaths has fallen over time. So we were starting in 1979 at 26% of road deaths related to drunk driving. In 2020, the rate was 15%. I think that's still not good enough. It's not acceptable. We need to do more. Distraction with mobile phones has been an issue and has been described as an epidemic. And I think we all can see people who are driving using their phone. Harsher penalties in 2018 were introduced, so newly qualified drivers will lose their licence if caught using a handheld mobile phone. Penalty points and fines for using a phone will double, and 6 points on your licence and a £200 fine. Drivers can have their licence revoked if they accrue 6 points within 2 years of passing their test. And those caught using a mobile phone twice or who accrue 12 points on their licence will face a magistrate's court disqualification and fines for up to £1,000. We've had many mobile phone campaigns which look at this potential thing about enforcement. Seatbelts, we've had a 60-year journey with seatbelts. I mean, when I think about it, in 1983, it took us until 1983 to have a law to say that we needed to wear a seatbelt. I can remember not wearing a seatbelt when I was a youngster. Now I wouldn't dream of not wearing a seatbelt. It's the most simple, easiest thing you can do to avoid injury in the result of a collision. So we've had, and it took us a little bit later to start saying that people need to wear them in the back. But we did have a very long period of campaigns which suggests why we got fairly high levels of compliance. If you just bring in a law without any awareness raising, you will not get the high levels of compliance. So in 1983, 40% of drivers were wearing a seatbelt, and post-law, there was an immediate reduction in driver fatalities and injuries, and post-law seatbelt wearing rates went up to 95%, and they've still remained that high. Behaviour change, it can be attributed to clear and unambiguous legislation, clearly evident benefits, and very high-quality media campaigns. That's what makes a difference. So it is a combination of factors that have led to such success. So we can now see that child rear seat passenger and driver rates are a lot higher than when they used to be. And it's a very simple public health message and very important. So, but we do have new challenges. I think culture is always developing and we need to remember that. So rates differ by population group. So I've done a lot of work in deprived areas and the rates are as low as 40 to 50%. So there's evidence that there's more work that needs to be done and these habitual behaviours are very challenging. And there's different socio-cultural practices. So for some cultures within our society, they're expected to take the whole family in the car, and then there are not enough seatbelts for everyone. And we know young men from deprived backgrounds are less likely to be wearing a seatbelt. So there's a lot of work we still need to do. And we need to start with awareness raising and education. We've had a drug drive law since 2015, so a zero tolerance drug to 8 drugs, like things like cocaine and cannabis and LSD, and also an approach to other drugs that people might not realise that they're impacting on their driving, and a separate approach to amphetamine that balances legitimate use of it with against abusive use of it. And lots of, don't worry, I'm not going to play this video, but it's drunk drive media campaigns showing a very dilated eyes for someone who's been using cannabis and driving. We also have developed a roadside swab that identifies drug drivers on the spot. But we have new challenges for safety culture. And I think, autonomous and connected vehicles, we hear about that all the time. We think it's going to be the answer to all our woes. But are they going to be reliable and safe? Is there, people are designing the software, people are fallible. Could we have software failures or could there be a cyber attack? So I think there are new problems and environments have to be very legible for autonomous vehicles to understand the speed limit, what's happening in the road. And here's an example of a media report. So the Tesla autopilot feature was involved in 13 fatal crashes. So we need to be mindful. It's not the answer to all of our problems in road safety, and certainly won't change other things. Now, I know in Japan, these are a particular interest, the challenges of micromobility, so electric scooters. They are illegal to own and use privately on public roads in the UK, but we do have loan schemes. And this is an example where legislation has been very ambiguous. And we are seeing more e-scooter deaths and serious injuries. So this is a big problem for the UK at the moment. So something that has been brought in for sustainability is potentially creating a safety problem. Another challenge is what we do about poverty and road crashes. So more road crashes are in poor areas. So the darker the blue, the most deprived areas. This is a big problem for the young. I think that's unacceptable. It's invisible if there's no data about it, and arguably, if it's not measured, it doesn't matter. So it needs a targeted approach. These people living in these environments are no different to you or I. They face a lot more challenges in more hazardous environments, and they're more dependent on walking as a mode of transport, and we need to do more to protect these people. And very few countries monitor this. Electric vehicles, another thing that is very topical at the moment, but they are heavier, they are faster, they are quieter. And this will have impacts on pedestrian safety. So there was a piece of work that was done, an academic peer-reviewed journal, that showed that electric cars are more likely to hit pedestrians than petrol studies. And we wonder why. So we cannot think that technology is always the answer. We may do it for sustainability, but we also need to think about the safety implications. Another challenge, I think, this is a piece of work, an area of work that I'm very interested in, is occupational road safety. And there is a huge growth in e-commerce and the gig economy. So delivery riders and drivers rushing around our streets, business models that reward fast delivery, and they are making trade-offs between profit over safety. So what is the gig economy? So workers get work through a digital platform, through an app, and get paid per gig or delivery. And you will see we have a couple of examples in these images here. It's low socioeconomic work, so potentially exacerbating inequalities. It's precarious, low paid, and there are many health and safety risks associated with this work. And anyone who is riding a motorcycle or a moped, they are the most vulnerable road users on our streets. In the UK, motorcyclists are 50 times more likely to die in a crash than car drivers, so they're vulnerable. And no amount of automation is going to protect them, especially if they're crashing without being involved with another vehicle. So this was a piece of work that I did and was published in Safety Science, delivering hot food on motorcycles. And basically we looked at riders who were employed through digital apps compared to riders that were employed by restaurants. So two very different business models. So compared to riders employed by restaurants, the gig economy riders were significantly more likely to report speeding, be distracted by their phone because their work comes through their phone. They are notified by an audible signal. If they don't answer that phone within a specific time, it's counted as a rejection and they're kicked off the system. So they need to respond quickly to it. So this is why you will see them looking at their phones. They report going more likely to go through red lights, weave in and out of congested traffic. They are paid more to go out in wet weather and icy weather. And they're incentivized to go out in hazardous conditions. They are less likely to wear protective clothes and more likely to report carrying heavy loads. A 1 litre of Coca-Cola will weigh a kilogram. And if they've got several of those in their backpack, it can be all sorts of issues around handling. They're more likely to report being stopped by the police, have penalty points on their licence, and to be involved in crashes. And in my opinion, this is a perfect storm of risk factors. So developing a traffic safety culture is a process, and cultural maturity is a process. Political will is crucial in terms of identifying policies and targets. Research, data and monitoring needs to be commissioned. Capacity is required to identify problems and deliver solutions. Solutions need to be multifaceted with legislation, education, training and engineering, and involve multiple agencies and to be evaluated. There will always be new challenges which threaten the effectiveness of a safety culture, for example, in the delivery sector. And this is a diagram from the government. So this is what they do with any kind of intervention and policy monitoring. So they'll have a rationale, they will set objectives, they will appraise the intervention, they will plan an evaluation at the same time as developing the intervention, they will monitor the implementation, they will evaluate and they will feedback. This is called the Rome F cycle, and it's part of government practice and it's really important. So in conclusion, by fostering a strong traffic safety culture, societies can work towards creating safer roads, reducing collisions, and ultimately save lives and create a better society. Everyone's participation, from policymakers to individual road users, is crucial for building a culture of safety. And we all need to aspire to a generative road safety culture, where safety is what we do business around here. Oops. So thank you, IATSS, for inviting me. It was a great honour. And thank you to the audience for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Christie. Next, we would like to welcome Ms. Claudia Adliasola Estile, Deputy Director, Global Urban Mobility, Director, Global Health and Road Safety Program, World Resources Institute. Ms. Adliasola Estile, please.
Ohayo gozaimasu. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very pleased to be here today. And I think the presentation that I have brought is very complementary to Professor Christie. I will be looking more at the international arena. I work in the developing world in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and I have brought you several examples for you to see how complex safety culture is and how we are working on issues that we have identified that are central to the issues of road safety in the developing world right now. So this is the agenda that I propose to you today. I want to quickly go to a global outlook, see what is happening, then start looking at three critical issues: speed, arterial roads or urban highways, and motorcycles. I will spend a little bit more time on the motorcycle topic, not only because we just finished a piece of research and you are the first ones to see what we have found out, but also because it is a critical issue right now in the developing world, and from what I can see, also in the developed world. Then we will look at how that impacts poverty, and finally, I want to make sure that we talk about climate change and how, as we build our cities, adapt and mitigate the impact of climate change, we should include road safety there. Let's get started. And many of you know that road safety is such a challenge for humanity that in 2011, the United Nations declared the first decade of action. That was followed in 2021 by the second decade of action, and in this time, it was very much related to the Sustainable Development Goals. That came with the ministerial conference in Stockholm in 2020, and I identify at least these 8 development goals that are totally related to road safety. So poverty, 92% of traffic fatalities occur in low and middle income countries. It is definitely an issue of health, as you can see there. Education, very sad to know that children and young people ages 5 to 29, the first cause of death for them are traffic crashes. Gender equality, women tend to walk a lot more than men, and they are the ones that are at high risk. And then we have decent work and economic growth. I think Professor Christie has made a very strong point on the gig economy and what is happening. But not only that, the commuter time for people, and you will see throughout the presentation, tend to be very much longer. And that's why people use motorcycles, which increases the risk. Reducing inequalities, road safety is such an unequal issue, sustainable cities and communities, and finally, climate change. After the ministerial conference, and once the second decade of action was in place, we have a global plan for road safety, and the main target is to reduce at least 50% of traffic fatalities by 2030. And it is a very different type of global plan because it's based on the safe system approach. Now, I'm not going to go through all the areas, but you can see there that we have what to do, how to do it, and who needs to do it. The Global Status Report on Road Safety was just launched last December 2023 and tell us that we have every year 1,019,000 people killed in the roads. That is really a very, very important statistic. Among others, you see that this is a very important issue in the developing world. 92% of fatalities happen in the developing world. And how often do we lose someone to a traffic crash? According to WHO, we have 227,000 children and young people under the age of 20 that die in traffic crashes annually. This makes road traffic injuries the leading cause of death for children and young adults ages 5 to 29 years globally. And this is the second time that I'm mentioning this statistic because it's truly painful and is, I think, a clear evidence of how we are failing in our transport system. We cannot be killing the most vulnerable, just ethically, but also in terms of economic development. This is the dumbest thing that we are doing. Now let's enter into these three topics that I brought to you, and I think we really need to work hard on that. The first one is speed, and I want to show you the case of two cities, one in the United States, Houston, and the second one, Madrid in Spain. Very similar population, about 5.4 million in Houston, 5.3 in Madrid. The area, though, is very different. We are talking about 2,724 square meters, while Madrid is about 560. The fatality rate is 12.9 per 100,000 in Houston, and in Madrid is 2.2. So let's reflect here on how the built environment helps us create a safety culture, just as you have it there. The mode share, very different. Of course, in Houston, you need an automobile to move everywhere, 91%. In Madrid, only 30%. Public transport in Houston, 3%. Impossible to financially be able to provide public transport in that very, very wide area. And in Madrid, 34% of people move in public transport, walking and biking, 1%. And in Madrid, 36%. So it is a huge difference in terms of how you build a city and what are the results that you have in road safety, but we can talk about many other important results like social cohesion or equality. Now, speed. Let's talk about the speed. Remember that we have been around speed for only 100 years since the automobile started with high speeds. Yeah? When it comes to altitude, our brains have evolved to understand much clearer altitude and to have a more accurate perception of altitude. So, if I were to ask you all, we are gonna get a ladder and go to just the first floor, not the second floor, the first floor, and then we all are gonna try and jump. Yeah? I want to see how many volunteers I have in the room. No one, right? Because you clearly think, if I jump from that ladder and I fall in the wrong way, I might break my arm, I might hit my neck, and you are totally right. Because people that will jump from that distance, 10% of them will die. We don't want that today, so I'm not gonna do that experiment. And this is the way Claes Tingvall from Sweden explains speed. Yeah? If you see that cartoon, imagine that the street speed limit is 50 kilometers per hour, and if someone in that urban area will make a mistake, then hit that pedestrian at 50 kilometers per hour, it will be comparable of falling from a cliff. And here you have at 30 kilometers per hour, 10% of people hit will die. And we are having a big conversation in many cities about 30 kilometers per hour, and that's a turtle speed, you know, nobody's moving there. Well, I have to say that the average speed in most cities around the world is around 18 to 20 kilometers per hour, so that's an urban speed there. But it also, you know, if we go higher than that, at 50 kilometers per hour, our bodies are so sensitive to speed that 80% of people will die at that speed if somebody's hit. Now look, we had to work quite a bit in several countries on speed, motorcycles and arterial roads, so I'm gonna be giving you some examples here. Bogotá is a city in Colombia where we have worked quite a bit, so here is a heat map of traffic crashes there. And in order to make the case about how speed is so dangerous, we map it. As you can see here, are the traffic fatalities. Look at the center line that is called Avenida Boyacá. We will talk later about it. And see how it lines up exactly with is the place where you have the majority of people speeding over 50 kilometers per hour. Yeah? And we did the same with children victims and speed. This was incredibly important to help the city and the community to understand that speed was indeed an issue. What happens with the speed is that many cities, many citizens think that it's not a problem because they are congested. Yeah? But that's the problem in certain times of the day, in certain roads, but we needed to demonstrate that really speed was a big issue in some of the main roads there. We have been working on speed data in other cities around the world because, again, this is a very important issue. And even though we could have speed data, amazing speed data today, because we have many companies that do deliveries, we have ride-hailing, we have telecommunication companies that could give us that data to be able to protect people, the data is not available. Yeah? So we have to be very creative and use, in this case, Google API, and start looking at segments of roads and average speeds and different times of the day and conditions to be able to map out and say, you know, these are the areas where you are having trouble and what is more or less the speed that is causing trouble. Now let's move to arterial roads, and I'm going to talk here about Avenida Boyacá in Colombia, in Bogota. It's an avenue that has 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers of cycling infrastructure, but most of it is not on the road, it's on the sidewalk. It has 51 fatalities and 1,295 serious injuries in 2023, and this has been a constant for many years. 17 pedestrians killed and 24 motorcyclists. Only 29 kilometers of road in the city concentrate 9.44% of the fatalities. Why? Because there are very high speeds, lack of pedestrian crossings. Look at that picture and look how clearly people walk there. They have marked a crosswalk there, and yet they don't have a crossing until now. There is a priority to motorized vehicles, no pedestrian infrastructure, and the design of this road is really a highway road, right? Very wide sections, wide turning radius. The slip lane that you can see there is a design for a highway. When you want someone to merge to a different lane, you give them the opportunity to do so, keeping the speed. This is the type of design that there is still in cities, but in cities, you never know who is on the other side. So look at that cyclist trying to maneuver with vehicles that are going at the same speed on that slip lane. And there are problems of inequality. The north of Bogota is a lot wealthier than the south, and so you can see in the north they have a proper pedestrian crossing with a traffic light. In the south, the people that are crossing there are crossing to the building on the farthest left is a hospital, and they don't have a pedestrian crossing there. Well, cities change, and the picture that you see here on the left is Avenida Boyacá. Back in the 60s, it was just a road, an urban highway outside the city completely. And look how it is today. It's fully densified, and they have kept the same design that was made to just have cars going straight forward and keeping the same speed. The pedestrian crossings are about 600 to 800 meters. So imagine if you have to walk 6 blocks, 8 blocks, if you are a mother with kids, or if you are an elderly person, you will not walk 600 meters, 800 meters to find a signalized intersection and then go back and walk another 400 meters to get to your destination. Most likely, you will have to just look right and left and try to cross the street. So a terrible design. Talking about safety culture, these are the things that we really need to start changing. Very similar in Accra. Look at this, is the N1 highway. 10 lanes, markets on the right and on the left, no pedestrian crossings, one of the most dangerous places in Accra. Same thing in Mumbai, in the LBS Road, and Avenida de las Americas. I've been there. This is called the Boulevard of Death in Rio de Janeiro. It takes you 8 minutes to try to cross that street if you try to do it in the pedestrian crossing and using the traffic lights. Impossible. Only if you have a vehicle, you can maneuver there. Now, those roads have been built 20, 30 years ago. But look at this, Nairobi in Kenya. They refurbished the outer ring road, they upgraded it for $120 million during the pandemic. I just want to highlight this because, sometimes we say there is no money in the developing world. In the developing world, there is money, there are resources. The problem is, how are they invested? This road has become the deadliest in the whole country. It kills 44 people, killed 44 people in 2022 and 50 in 2023. Avenida Guayacanes in Bogota, where we have been working for quite a bit, 10 years, opened this corridor of about 11.5 kilometers. Look again, the same design, a straight line there, going into a place that is very dense. Look at the result, right? 24 people killed, 913 people injured. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but it comes from the planning and design manual. The engineers, the architects that planned for that new road, what happened is that they had to follow this, which is a law, it's a regulation in the city. And the problem is that that manual is based on highway capacity manual. It doesn't take into account pedestrians, it doesn't take into account vulnerable users of the road at all. And that's why the city spent millions of dollars again in that road. Finally, in New York, the Boulevard of Death, Queens Boulevard, since 1990 to 2022 had 194 people killed, 143 of them pedestrians. Many years. All what the city did is put these signals, signs, to say, this is dangerous, please be alert. Did it work? Absolutely no. And so they had, in 1993, 24 deaths only in that road, 1997, so they start thinking, what can we do, right? If that sign is not working, let's try maybe adjusting signal timing, putting curve extensions, wider medians, protected barriers, crosswalk cameras. And they saw that the number of fatalities started decreasing. Then they had another spike in 2013, and at that point they decided to reduce the speed limit to 25 miles per hour, which is about 40 kilometers per hour, instead bike lanes, lanes designs. They continue working on this road, but look at the number of fatalities, reducing 68%. The number of pedestrians decreased in 45%. And cyclists, because it is now an urban road, more cyclists are coming. So it was an increase in between 100 and 450%. So you can make a street to be not only safer, but a lot more sustainable. Finally, motorcycles. And let's take a little bit more time on this topic. Is a very difficult topic right now around the world. Everywhere where I go to work, being that, Ho Chi Minh City, Sao Paulo, or Accra, the mayor will come and ask me, what do I do with motorcyclists? What do I do? Do I educate them? Do I find them? So this is a very important question, and I know that this organization started by really reflecting on how to protect motorcyclists. So I would love that we together start thinking about what else can we do on motorcycle safety. We know that there is an equity issue here, I already mentioned it, but here, look at this. Again, the city of Bogota, where we have really good data, and that's why I'm able to show you a lot of examples. 95% of trips made in low-income households are made by motorcycles. If you don't have a motorcycle, and let me give you a little story. I have traveled to Bogota many times and stay in the same hotel. So one day, one of the young, people at the counter asked me, "What do you do here? Why do you come so often?" So I said, "I'm working in road safety." And said, "Oh, road safety. Look, I used to come in a motorcycle and I fell down so bad one time, I destroyed my hand. I had to have surgery. And I recovered after a couple of months, and then I took my motorcycle to come to my job here at the hotel again, and I fell down and destroyed my other hand. So my mother has begged me to please not use the motorcycle again. But the problem is that with the motorcycle, I can come to the hotel in 40 minutes. But if I use mass transportation, it takes me 3 hours per direction. And his shift is from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon. So how much time does the person have to sleep, to live a little bit? So this is the very difficult issue that we are facing right now. The hotspots are exclusively in low-income areas, and the trends are changing. We have 217 killed pedestrians, 113 from them were killed by a motorcyclist. So it goes both ways. Yeah? Who is affected the most? Young people, young males. Look at that, in between 21 and 40, which means that the city of Bogota is losing economically the most productive of their people. And we are talking only about fatalities here, but what about severe injuries? And when we talk about severe injuries, because someone in a motorcycle can go at 140 kilometers per hour, the motorcycle allows it to do it, they lose limbs, they get really bad injuries in neck and the back, so terrible for these young people. So the research that I mentioned to you was made with data from 6 cities: Bogota, Cali, in Colombia, Buenos Aires, in Argentina, Nairobi, in Kenya, Accra, Ghana, and Bangkok in Thailand. We look at the speed, at geometry, land use, and infrastructure. The data was not perfect, and it took us literally years to clean up the data, to look at it again, and to really come up with some of the conclusions that you will see here. The methodology we use is data with geocoded road safety data. Speed, we look at the built environment, particularly lane width, carways, pedestrian bridges, population density, and land use. Again, this is a lot of information here, but I just want to tell you that in road geometry, for example, one of the things that we look quite a bit is at medians, at exclusive lanes, in land use, population density, in employment centers. Just to give you some examples, infrastructure, we look at pedestrian bridges, signalized junctions, and in operation, speed and traffic volumes. So a thorough analysis of all the data that we have. And what are the relevant findings? Wider roads and lanes are associated with higher speeds, filtering and weaving, which are the main problems where we find people getting killed. So it's a terrible mix, right? Because we have a planning code that tells us we have to build this type of road, very wide and very straight, and then we allow people to use a motorcycle, right? Motorcycle trips originate mostly where accessibility to public transport and bus rapid transit is the lowest. And these are all the findings. I'm going to go through them here, and I will be happy to also share the final report. As I said, we just finished, so it should be ready by January or early February. But the first recommendation is on speed. Speed interventions should be comprehensive and continuous, and not just point-based. So we found out that when the police goes and does some speed enforcement, the speed improves and there are no traffic crashes anymore, but that hot spot just shifts a little bit farther down the road because the motorcyclists know that they will get in trouble and then they start speeding as soon as they pass the control. All the traffic needs to have speed management, not only motorcycles, safe design, clearly a topic, and reconsidering speed limits for motorcyclists. Improve design and reduce complexity of intersections, again, because the roads are so big and so wide, and some of the intersections are this big, as you are seeing there, and have no signaling. It becomes a terrible hotspot for pedestrians. So we are definitely not recommending to have less intersections. We need to have more frequent intersections, but they have to be more compact and they have to really be simple and controlled by traffic lights. Road widths, medians, and margins, particularly in medians, we found that it was a terrible problem, and this is the reason. Because they will merge when the traffic is going at really fast speed, as you can see here, and it ends up being critical. Redesigns or close median openings is something that we are recommending, and control lane width and roadway width. In terms of combined actions for motorcycle safety with actions for other road users, we found something really interesting with pedestrian bridges, which, by the way, don't work, and many of the cities are putting them down because what happens is that it's either very cumbersome to go all the way up and cross, or there are, there is crime in the bridge and people don't want to go there, so they just cross straight, and it's where people get killed because the vehicles think if they have a pedestrian bridge, then they should be crossing over there. I'm not expecting to have a pedestrian here. A really difficult problem, and it's the same for motorcycle safety. There were many things that we couldn't look in this report, and is, for example, motorcycle dedicated infrastructure, which is a question mark. We have data that says they are terrible from Sao Paulo, and data from Malaysia that says they work. So we have to understand why. Road and surface quality, weather, and many other topics, but the topic of motorcycle safety is complex. You have there the licensing and yes, making this driver, that is the one that has the highest risk, more knowledgeable. You also have the vehicle. And my question is why we continue producing motorcycles that can go at speeds of 140 kilometers per hour when we know that that will be a death sentence. At least for this majority of people, this is not recreational. This is to commute or to do work, as you are seeing in this picture. So I really would like to start reflecting with all of you, how can we start pushing the market to have motorcycles that cannot go more than 40 kilometers per hour? And finally, the infrastructure that we have spoken quite a bit. I really enjoy all the analysis that you did, Professor Christie, on the gig economy. It is incredibly sad that the companies that own this technology don't give the motorcyclists an insurance. They don't have any labor laws that protect them. And yet they are the ones that are being killed, terribly. The incentives that they have are awful. It's really a topic that we need to look at. Speaking of which, poverty, which is another area that can help us push the safety culture, just making a strong case in the finance ministries, in the finance secretaries, to say that if we don't invest in road safety and if we don't have performance indicators for investments in infrastructure, we can face a reduction of 7 to 22% of GDP. And this is an analysis that was done by the World Bank. This is a study from South Korea, and one of the main results is really sad here, right? Because if someone will get into a traffic crash and will be lucky enough to survive and recover, if it goes back to the labor force, the salary will be reduced to 40%. And that is something that we should not accept, and we should work harder to really make a very strong case that road safety is a poverty issue, it's an equity issue, and we need to deal with it. Finally, let's talk a little bit about climate change. I have been enjoying these past days in Tokyo. I had very good luck with the weather. It was beautiful, but every time I mention that, people from Tokyo will tell me this is not the right weather. It's December, right? So it is. Our world is warming up and we are feeling it more and more. Transport is a very important responsible for emissions. 25% of carbon emissions come from the transport sector. So if we want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to work on transport, and we need to work on transformational change. So these are some of the disasters that we have seen this year. This is an image of a city totally flooded in the south of Brazil. And what we know is that road safety is so interdisciplinary, so interlinked, that if we work on road safety, we might be able to get more people using mass transportation, walking and cycling, which is where they get killed the most. So this report from Germany, the TUMI Transport Outlook, says that we need, in order to keep the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, we need to double public transportation, and we need to have 50% of trips by walking and cycling. And I think from these couple of days of experience here in Tokyo, that Tokyo is doing a really good job on this target. Private car is definitely not the solution, and we need to continue shifting. Report after report of IPCC tells us that. So we need to change, and in order to change, road safety is a big enabler. Parents are not going to tell their kids, walk to school or use a bicycle if things are dangerous there. Finally, just to say that, our cities are warming up, are heating, and as we start thinking how to cope with what is already here, we need to think, how do we integrate road safety in all these investments so that it's not an afterthought, it's not something that we go to the statistics and say, oh, wow, what is happening here? Let's start putting some Band-Aid here and here, but rather just integrate it. With that, I just want to finish with one example of a city in the north of Spain, Vitoria-Gasteiz, that I think does a very nice job of integrating all these concerns on road safety and the environment, with ending up with creating a safety culture that has also many other benefits. Look, in 2006, the city of Vitoria-Gasteiz got a new mayor, and the mayor looked at the data and So the people here in Vitoria-Gasteiz used to walk a lot. It's a small city of 300,000 people. But turns out that there are more and more cars and people are walking less and less. So let's do something. The city also wanted to be carbon neutral by 2050, and transport was one of the main culprits. So the mayor said, I want to have a sustainability pact with the community. And he worked on explaining what it was until the community said, yes, we want to do that. Now, one thing that I love from this plan is that it had 50 actions. Each of the actions had a responsible or responsibles and a budget, so that if someone had to build a bike lane and the utilities, water, electricity, were on the way, that person didn't have the excuse to say, oh, you know, the utility guy doesn't want to give me an authorization, so I cannot do it. They were together and they had the money to do it, so they had to do it. Yeah? And it was incredible how this really worked. They were able to go from having the space for cars, 69% of the city was for cars, to shifting that to 71% space for people. How? By adding a lot of investment on public transport. They create 2 trams, they make it of better quality for the citizens. They went from having a very car-oriented public space, look at that, basically another arterial road here, that had 10 lanes for cars to go into 5 lanes, one of them for parking. How did they use the rest of the space? Nature, they planted more trees, they had bike lanes, they just made the space a lot better and a lot more efficient for all the users. So they went from being a city oriented to car to being one oriented to people in nature. Cycle lanes were very important. They had a full plan there. Speed, they reduced the speed citywide to 30 kilometers per hour. And with that, I just want to really thank you for this opportunity. I think the way we advance in road safety is by working together, all of us, thinking and connecting. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I hope we can continue making a good impact in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Adelia Soler-Style.